Karen Reed second trial is underway. We're going to talk about that, plus update you on a few other things on tonight's Charlie Crime Talk. Some people call it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of Charlie Crambuster nor Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, good afternoon, James. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Charlie, how are you?
I'm doing good. Sound like you got a little cold going on there.
I do. I'm just getting over it, so my voice is a little rough, but yeah. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, all good, huh?
Yeah, all good.
all good in the neighborhood.
Yeah, all good in the neighborhood. That's
all
right.
good in the neighborhood. Well, we got some explosive stuff going on this week, so I guess before we do that, let's tell the folks a little bit about some of the places they can find us online and some of the programs that we're involved in, just to give them a little update on where Charlie Crimebuster is.
All right. Well, as we've always tell our folks, that we're sponsored by the Peacemaker Network, and we want to thank all of those who support our podcast and also the men and women, first responders, law enforcement, and our military by being monthly badge, BADGE members by subscribing to peacemakernetwork.com. And if you would like to become a member, simply go to peacemakernetwork.com. Again, that is peacemakernetwork.com. And if you're a true crime junkie and would like to encourage you to binge-cast, you can listen to all of our archive podcasts right here on YouTube. It's youtube.com/the and Charlie Crambuster. And if you just search for Charlie Crambuster, it'll come up as well. But also here at Charlie Crambuster, we welcome comments, suggestions, opinions, and whether you agree or disagree with us. This is a safe space, and we would like to hear from you. So you can reach out with a shout out. You can email Charlie at charliecrimbuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimbuster@gmail.com. Or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211.
James, and when we do the podcast, of course, I share this as we do on every podcast, the peacemakernetwork.com. I did want to take just a moment tonight to say to our listeners that when we talk about these brave folks, the first responders, law enforcement, and the military, I think sometimes it is not said enough that among that great group of people in law enforcement are the correctional officers of this country.
Oh, that's true.
Those folks that are standing there, that thin line between us and the bad guys, and as a police officer, as a patrol officer, as a sheriff's deputy, even as a chief deputy, my job was a whole lot easier because once I made the arrest, I would drop them off, and that would be the last part, for the most part, that I would have until I found somebody else out there on the street. But these guys are in there 24/7.
They are.
With some bad people, unfortunately. And, just this last week, we're very saddened here in Volusia County because there was a very, very good correctional officer who the stress of it just got too much for him, and unfortunately, he took his own life. And there is an entire department right now that's reeling and really really impacted and hurting. And so I just don't think we say enough about the kind of stress that these brave men and women face day in and day out. And it does impact them. And that's why we are very proud that our sponsor is peacemakernetwork.com, because there is help for these brave men and women. There are places they can go. There are people that they can talk to. And so we do encourage, if you are a first responder, if you are a part of the military, if you are a part of the correctional group of people, these brave men and women are law enforcement, check it out at peacemakernetwork.com. There's going to be places there where you can get help if you need it. And like we say, it's a safe place to disagree. Peacemakernetwork.com is a safe place for these first responders. So just want to take a moment and say that at the beginning of tonight's show.
Thank you, Charlie. That's very, 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 there's also too, we have security officers as well,
Exactly. Yeah.
protect our properties here and there. And so, yeah, that's also
Yeah, yeah. There was just this week. There was some security officers involved in a pretty horrendous shooting. And these the security officers are out there as well. You're right. I appreciate you taking the time to mention that as well. So let's not forget all of these brave heroes out there. There's a whole group of people, and we are very, very, very thankful for each and every one of them.
we certainly are. Well, let's begin with an update on the three
Okay.
national cases that we've been reporting on, starting with the Menendez brothers and followed by Lori Vallow.
Well, yes, the Menendez brothers, as we reported during our past podcasts, they were set for their 2 day resentencing hearing, but there was a big glitch. And that glitch was that the new prosecutor for the state, for the county of Los Angeles, that new prosecutor, he wasn't in line with the former prosecutor who was arguing in favor of the Menendez brothers being resentenced. And the new prosecutor, Hank, no, the new prosecutor rather in the Menendez brothers deal, he basically said that there had been a report, a comprehensive risk report regarding the Menendez brothers. And I can't help but think, James, the way he's pushing for everything to be delayed until the judge sees that report. I believe that report probably had some very negative things about the Menendez brothers and probably really highlighted the risk of putting these guys back into society. Don't know what the report says, haven't read it, and haven't really seen what the report says, hasn't really been reported what the report says, but by the new prosecutor arguing strongly to delay the Menendez sentencing until the fact that they get this report, I think it probably would lean toward not granting them their freedom. So we
Wow.
know now that and this is really important because it really depends on whether Eric and Lyle Menendez will see life outside prison. And now we know that the hearing, because of that, has been postponed for another month because the judge has to rule on two motions that need to be settled before that process can move forward. So we're going to look at at least another month before that happens. Now they are going to meet on May the 9th to discuss the next steps in this 2 day resentencing that they called off. So May the 9th, we should have some more news about this.
All right. With regard to Lori Vallow, were you surprised by the
Oh
guilty
wow,
verdict?
that was that's fresh news, right?
Right off the press.
Just a few hours ago, and if anybody out there thinks I was surprised by that verdict, then they are the ones been on an island
Yeah, exactly.
under a rock. No, I don't think anybody was surprised by that verdict. Um, I was, I thought that she would have that verdict, and on top of that. I thought that it would happen very quickly, and it did indeed. The thing I guess I was surprised for is that she did not put herself on the stand and that she did not try to steal the limelight a little more. I think a real interesting thing that I just read just a few minutes ago before we got on the air tonight was the fact that one of the jurists in that trial said that one of the things she said very quickly they could see the lies that she was telling, and she had, the web that she had woven with all these lies. But she said beyond that, there was just the feeling that she was not serious. She did not take that serious. That she was laughing and was lighthearted the whole time she was doing the trial, and she did not come across as authentic to the jury. So that old adage that the person who defends themselves and takes their own self for a lawyer, that they're a fool. I think that that's probably very true in this case. Now, as far as her sentencing usually takes place about 30 days from a verdict. However, there is yet another trial that Lori Vallow is going to be facing,
That's right.
and that is conspiring to kill Brandon Bordeaux. That's her niece's estranged husband.
Uh-huh.
And so there's going to be that trial. That's a status update is coming up in mid-May on that one. So I think it's going to be after that trial has been settled, then there'll be a sentence. So I don't think there's any surprise about the sentencing on this. She's already in prison for the rest of her life,
Right.
and I think that she will again get prison for the rest of her life. The only thing that's really different that people need to know is that her co-conspirator, I guess we should say her husband, Chad, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, he is not going to be in prison for the rest of his life, but he's going to face the death penalty.
Right.
You know? Of course,
That's
there'll
right.
be a whole bunch of appeals before then, but so that's where we are with Lori. She's guilty, defined by a jury of her peers, and she's going to be going next for the trial with Brandon, the attempted murder of him, and then after that there will be another. I don't know. Do you think some people out there are thinking, what a waste of money because she's already in prison for the rest of her
I
life.
know, right?
But we continue on this and think of the millions of dollars that these trials is costing the costing us as taxpayers. However, I did see that the family of Charles Vallow, that they did get some peace and solace because of this, and so maybe that's worth all the money in the world. Who knows?
Yeah, they will, and they did. They got justice, I think.
Yeah, right.
But tell us about the crazy crook story in our last episode.
We always have these crazy crook stories. Our guy today, our last week we shared with it. We talked about the fact that if you're holding up a bank, I imagine you would be nervous. This guy got so nervous that right in the middle of the hold up, he fainted,
I know.
right cold on the floor. So can you imagine? Can you imagine holding up a bank and you faint right in the middle and yet that happened. It really happened. And so I would probably say that it's just not a good idea to hold up a bank any way you look at it.
That's right. That is right. You shouldn't be holding up a bank, period. You're right.
These crazy crooks, there's some crazy things happen with them, no doubt about it. And we hope that as we share these in every episode, that it kind of lightens the load a little bit. We do share some pretty dark things, don't we?
We do. We do.
Yeah.
With regards to Karen Reed, in filling us in on some of the motions before the court last week, you told us about Turtle Boy. What's up with that? Kind of give us an idea what that was all about.
Yeah, Turtle Boy, old Turtle Boy. Well, he's the blogger and the podcaster who basically, I guess, is responsible for the groundswell of support for Karen Reed. I think one of the statements that really stands out to me, with finding all of the journalists, the broadcasters, and the people who report on true crime all the time. I think one of the most I guess it really had an impression on me. One of the guys who follows this all the time said never, ever, ever, ever in his life did he ever think that he would go to a trial like this and report on it and actually see the people cheering the accused murderer as she walked into court. But they are, and they're there right now. I mean, they've been there this week. They've been outside the court. They've been having picnics on the lawn. They've been holding their signs up, free Karen Reed. They've been supporters of Karen Reed, a whole groundswell of people. That is basically because of the actions and the efforts of Turtle Boy, and he has really energized an entire groundswell of people. So that pretty well up there in the area where this is being held, there's probably we're kind of split right down the middle. You either believe Karen Reed did it, or you believe there's a police cover up, and it's split down the middle. And Turtle Boy was doing that, but the prosecution had alleged that Turtle Boy went beyond being a journalist, beyond reporting on a story, and actually engaged in witness intimidation. And
Wow.
we do know there were times when he would even go to the place where these adults, children were playing on the playground or playing in sports, and he would basically confront these witnesses right there, which I think is way, way too much. And so he was actually prosecuted, or indicted, rather, I would say, and actually spent some jail time. And so the defense, certainly Karen Reed did confide into the Turtle Boy and was sharing the information. And so the prosecution wanted to get some of those that communication. They wanted to bring that communication before the court. Only problem is in the before we got into the trial and the motions, it come to be that Turtle Boy, according to his attorney, if he is called on the stand, he's not going to testify what took place between he and Karen Reed. And keep in mind, Karen Reed is probably not going to testify. The reason he is not going to testify is he has something, a privilege, because he's been indicted on these charges of self-incrimination. So he's going to plead the fifth. He's going to say he's not going to answer the questions on the fact that it might intend to incriminate him. And so he's not going to be forced to testify. And I think that's a big deal because I think probably the prosecution was really going to depend on some of that communication between Turtle Boy and Karen Reed in it. So the big deal that we found out was that he was going to plead the fifth, and he will not be, no matter how much a lot of you would like to see him on the stand. He's not going to be on the stand in this trial. Now, he may be on the stand in another trial, but not in this trial.
Gotcha. Well, ARCA, the accident reconstructive company, got a lot of attention this last week. Where are we with that today?
There was a lot of attention on that. And I think the big attention came about from the fact that they were basically presented in the first trial as unbiased, that they were not, they were neutral. They were actually hired by the federal government, who was actually doing an investigation on the investigation because of these allegations that there was a police cover up. And so they wanted somebody to really take a look at the case. And so they hired ARCA, which is a very prominent firm that does accident reconstructions all over the country. They're well known. They have a lot of credibility, and they came in very strong for the defense. The only thing now that they found out since the first trial is that while Alan Jackson was talking about how this was such a neutral group of people and that they were unbiased, we have now found that the ARCA people were actually paid $24,000 by the defense. And so the new prosecutor in this round, we're going after Karen Reed, actually was trying to get ARCA stricken from being able to come and testify. And the last ruling on it was that they can come and testify, but they cannot be presented as a neutral type of witness. They can't be presented as unbiased because of their connection with the defense at this time. And so, interesting enough, the judge had asked for some text between Alan Jackson or the defense and ARCA for her to review. She did not get those texts in time for this trial to start. So she actually stated to Alan Jackson, the defense, that they could not refer to ARCA in the opening statements that they made yesterday.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, even though they did mention the fact that they said basically the evidence, the facts, and all of the data will reveal, according to the opening statements from the defense. He said the facts, the data, and the evidence will reveal that John O'Keefe was not hit by a car, and they could say that, but they couldn't say based on ARCA and present them as a neutral defense. But as far as I know, the best I can tell, they will be involved in the case. They just will not be, tied as necessary a neutral entity in the case.
Well, how important is this ruling on ARCA?
I think it's critical. I thought, to me, I thought the strongest part of the case for the defense was Arca's testimony. I believe it really did cause some doubt, some reasonable doubt in the minds of that first jury. We know now that the first jury on the two most serious charges, they were going to rule not guilty. And so I believe it was basically, I think for I think a large impact on that was that ARCA came in as that independent identity, and they had basically said, based on their evidence that the injuries of John O'Keefe was not consistent to being hit by a car. And of course, the expert that the prosecution had was Trooper Paul, and Trooper Paul is a decent trooper. You know, he is a accident. He's been trained in accident reconstruction, but he doesn't have the background that ARCA has. He doesn't have the scientific background. He doesn't have the education that the two witnesses for ARCA has. So yes, ARCA had a tremendous impact upon the case. The question I guess we all have to think about is, by ARCA not being entitled now as are titled now as a non-judgmental, basically neutral group, will that impact the case for for the prosecution? I think that's going to be the real question.
Wow. So do you think the dog bite testimony is critical to the case since they're saying that he did not, that the injuries are not consistent with being hit by a car?
Well, as you know, Alan Jackson basically stated, the defense. One of the reasons why he said he took that case was basically because when he saw the pictures of John O'Keefe's injuries, he said that that especially his arm that was cut up, that does not look like that he was hit by a car. He said that it looked more consistent with being bit by a dog. And here's where the dog bite, I think, comes into it. There was a large uh, German Shepherd, part German Shepherd in the house, and there was a big dog. And of course, the defense is probably alleging that maybe in the fight the dog got involved and the dog bit John O'Keefe's arm. And there is going to be someone now that's going to come and testify that that is the case, that those arms, that wounds is more consistent with being bit by a dog. But I think the other thing that is really going to be very interesting is if the defense, and I'm sure the defense is going to, point this out. There were some things that happened in that house that certainly didn't help the prosecution. One is that the Alberts there, here's a police officer, and a fellow police officer dies on his lawn, and he doesn't even come out of the house that morning. So that's a little strange behavior.
That is strange
Well,
behavior.
on top of that, Albert and the ATF officer, and they're right, right during this time during the investigation, they both got rid of their phones. Which is
Mm,
again not, not
yeah.
it's not proof, but it certainly doesn't help the case any. And then on top of that, guess what? They got rid of their dog. They rehomed their dog right after that. So
They
that happening
also
happen
moved.
yeah, that happening in that time frame, I think makes this dog bite testimony much more critical. Now, um, you could go on the other side and say, is it really proven that the dog bit him? It would be nice if they could examine the dog. It would be nice if they could, take,
Yeah.
some kind of impression of the dog's teeth and see if it lines up. But they can't do that because the dog is gone.
Yeah.
And so I think that the dog testimony is critical, and of course that's why the new prosecutor, he argued very very strong. Hank Brennan did, that he was trying to argue that this specialist who was a canine handler and had trained other police officers in handling canines, he was arguing that he was not an expert, that he did not have the credentials to be an expert. And of
Mm.
course, the defense comes back and says, well, this guy trains canine handlers all over the world and have certainly seen a lot of dog bites. And so they are going to allow that testimony as of the last thing that we saw with it.
Well, in your view, what's the difference about this trial than the last one?
Well, I think there's several really, really huge factors that are playing into this. Number one, it is the lineup of the attorneys. She still has Alan Jackson. She still has her other attorney, but the prosecutor is new. Hank Brennan is a former prosecutor and a defense attorney, and he was brought in as a special prosecutor after the mistrial. He has represented a number of high-profiled characters, including Whitey, with the mob.
Yeah.
So he has a really good track record, and I can tell you, in listening to the opening statements, you can tell that he is a really, really uh, a well thought of attorney. He's very good at what he does, and I think and no no disrespect to the previous prosecutor, but I think he is more suit to go up against Jackson than the previous prosecutor was. And when I heard him start his opening, I was basically riveted. I was he had me. He had my attention. He told it like a story. He was talking about how the first responder got that call that night, how he got into the ambulance that night, and as they were driving that night, the you could tell that the roads were treacherous because the ambulance was sliding from side to side. So he was telling a story. He was capturing the jury and bringing them into the scene, unlike the past prosecutor did. So the one of the biggest thing is that the prosecution has a really top notch prosecutor going after it. So Alan Jackson, I believe, really has his work cut out for him. And again, Alan Jackson, I thought he was phenomenal too. So you're going to see in this trial two wonderful attorneys who have a lot of experience and who have a lot of skills are going to battle this case. The second thing I think is what we just covered is that ARCA impact upon this jury will not maybe not have the total impact that it had before when the jury was looking at it as a neutral group of people rather than someone who's lining up with the defense now. So I think that's a big difference as well. And then also, of course, we're going to see, that this time around, I think the prosecutor's going to do a lot more work on trying to take Karen Reed's own words and all of the media uh, appearances she's had, and they're going to try to bring that into it as well. So I think it's going to be different. I think the prosecutor's going to have a tighter case this time. He's going to stick more to the facts. I think there's also going to be a better expert brought by the prosecution to basically say that they feel that the injuries was consistent with being hit by a car. So, I think it's going to battle down to a battle between the experts. And as the judge gave the instructions to the jury, it is up to the jury to decide which expert they think is on the money and which one isn't.
Interesting. Well, what will the prosecutor have to overcome to get this guilty verdict, you think?
Well, there's a lot of things he's going to have to overcome a really, really, really a blotched investigation.
Yeah.
There were so many mistakes made on this. When they got there, they didn't even go into the house and interview the people in the house. Now here is the defense alleging that he was inside that house. Here's Karen Reed saying, with her, her media appearances, that she let him off. She saw him go into that house. There is the allegations that he went into that house, that he was beat up, he was bit by the dog, and brought out. And yet, when the investigation started, they did not even go into the house at that time of the, of this incident. They did not even go into the house and interview the witnesses there. They didn't separate the witnesses. That's the first thing you do. You separate the people, so they don't get their story together. That was never done. That did not happen, and so that really, and they didn't have a real strong case as far as how they preserved the evidence. Then on top of that, you have the state trooper himself, who was actually Proctor, who was actually leading the investigation. He's since been fired from the department.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Yep.
he
Yep.
said some terrible, terrible things about Karen Reed. He let information go out to people that he should not have let information go out for. He was basically, he certainly acted in an inappropriate manner in this investigation. And so the prosecutor's got to overcome all of this, and then he's got to overcome ARCA, which I think they're going to stand firm on, and they really do. They really do seem to be very strong on the stand. So he's going to have to overcome all of that in order to get a guilty plea.
All right, well, let's flip the coin. What will the defense face as far as challenges on this during this
I,
next
th- I
trial?
think that I think the biggest challenge they're going to have is they're going to face Hank Brennan. Brennan, and he's a phenomenal attorney. So Alan Jackson has his work cut out for him. I think that's the biggest thing. The other thing I think they're going to face is that they're going to actually face, I believe, a better expert than Trooper Paul to come and testify about the injuries being consistent with being hit by a car or not. And I think that's what it's going to boil down to. So
Well,
we got a big trial ahead of us, don't we?
we have a big trial ahead of us. Yeah, we
Yeah,
do.
and to the folks that are listening in real time, this has been this has been Wednesday. It's been the second day of the trial actually taking place. The jury was already picked, selected. Today it was just a day of witnesses on the stand. The openings have already been delivered by both Alan Jackson and Hank Brennan. Jackson also did at least allude that he has a surprise witness coming up. Don't know who that is, but we might see some surprises in this case. So, folks, stay
Wow.
tuned. We'll keep you posted. Our next podcast, we're going to let you know what happened this entire week of trial so that we can really get to that point. James, let me ask you, how long you think this trial is going to go?
I look for it to go probably another week, maybe two.
I think it's going to go beyond that. We'll see, right?
Oh, yeah, we will. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
well,
will.
it's already going what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe?
With jury selection, yeah, that's what, this is second week.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I guess it would be three,
yeah.
maybe 4 weeks,
You
yeah.
you maybe about 3 weeks in, but we'll see, right?
We
It's
will see.
according to how many of those sidebars they have, right?
That's right. That's right.
If we could cut out the sidebars, we'd get this thing handled pretty quickly. But every time you turn around, there's that sidebar. Wouldn't you like to be a bug right there and listen to what happens in those sidebars?
Exactly. I would love to be
Yeah,
there.
no
Yeah.
doubt about it. All right, folks, we want to say thank you for joining us today, and we hope that we've been informative to you on the Karen Reed trial. This is her second trial. It's going to be really interesting to see what happened. No doubt in my mind, there was reasonable doubt in that first trial, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying that I believe that he was beat up in that house and taken out in the snow, but I am saying that the defense in that first trial certainly was able to reveal enough reasonable doubt to keep her from being prosecuted or convicted in that trial. The question is, what's going to happen in this trial? Stay tuned. So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, stay safe, stay alert. Yep, for the life you save, it could be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com, or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.